Hey there, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. Join Brittany as she interviews incredible people whose stories will uplift you and remind you the life you long for is just ahead. Buckle up for an inspirational ride to your best life. Take it away, Britt.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Brittany Wheeler Show. So excited to have you today. And you are definitely watching this and being like, this setup looks a little different. I am fortunate enough to be in studio with my guest today, and I'm really excited to have a conversation. A conversation is going to inspire and leave an impression on you that I know is going to have an impact. As you know, that's our goal, is to bless one person every episode. My name is Brittany Wheeler. I'm the host of the Brittany Wheeler Show, and I'm going to just get right into it since my guest is literally right here. So he's a son of Christ, a grandson, a father, a brother, a friend, a singer, a songwriter, entrepreneur, podcast host of the Mentally Shredded podcast, founder and visionary of the Mentally Shredded Foundation. Please welcome Christopher Weedon to the Brittany Wheeler Show.
Wow, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome.
This is exciting.
This is exciting. Yeah. And to be very transparent, I haven't been back in person in studio since I started this podcast in 2022.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this is even though there's a familiarity in it, there's still an uncomfort of I'm back in a space that feels kind of new and kind of old, but we're trying it. We're doing it different.
Well, here we are. Let's do it.
I love it. Okay. So the next segment we go into in the show is to share either, why you said yes to the show or a story of how we met and how you know me. So I'll let you decide which one you want to share. Our story is cool, but I'll let you share what you feel is best for.
Awesome. Yeah. So Brittany and I met. We were connected through a mutual friend. I was in the UK, I believe, or just about to leave for that trip. And a mutual friend said, "Hey, I have this event going on, but both of you have a show. And I think there's synergy. I would like for you all to just meet and see if there is, one. And then secondly, y'all are going to be working together, right? So I'd rather y'all just get a chance to know each other." So that's how we were able to just build a relationship over literally the past few weeks. And we've spent a lot of time together now, and it's been amazing. It's been awesome to see your journey, learn more about you, and see everything that you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was really sweet. Yeah, it's really cool too. I think being in this space as a podcast host, you understand the value of when you meet someone that does what you do and the level that you do it. And what I really loved about the opportunity to do A View from the Glass House with you is that getting to meet you, I didn't have to question, I didn't have to ask. I just knew that you and I were aligned in the level that not only in what we're producing, but also what kind of impact we're trying to have, right? And so on the show, the goal is to bless one person every episode, right? I interview the 99, God finds the one. And what you're doing, and I'm excited for you to share that towards the end of what it is that you do and your journey with that. And so I think that experience and that event, to be very honest, I don't know if it would have been as good without you. Just from my perspective on the support you provided me, right? Because when you do a show by yourself, it's a one-person process. And so to have a partner that you were just like, "Hey, I got it. Let's talk it out." You're going to get the best results that way. And so that was a really cool experience.
Yeah. No, I agree 1000%.
I love it. All right. You ready to get some questions? Full disclosure, y'all. Our guest, Christopher, has not at all read the questions. So this is good. This is great. It's gonna be great. So take us back to your childhood. Share with the audience. I want to know, who young Chris was and what were you chasing after then?
The dream. I love playing soccer. My dream was to be a professional soccer player. What's interesting, though, that's the story I tell people. The first dream was to sing. It was to be on stages. It was to use the gift that I know God gave me and use my voice. My grandmother always spoke over me, "Chris, one day God's going to use your voice and you're going to bless people all over the world," right? And you start getting older. High School Musical wasn't a thing. It wasn't as cool back then to sing and play sports. So I chose And it's interesting though, the closer I got to God, the more he gave me my gift. Say I lost it for a little while. And in the short time that we've even gotten to know each other, I've made music. I sing all the time, right? So it's starting to pour out of me, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, if I'm being honest with myself, I tell people soccer was the goal and that was the dream because that's what people knew me for. But if I'm being real with myself, soccer was just an avenue or a vehicle I thought would take me where I wanted to go. That was never really the passion though. I just got good at it.
So I would ask, what excites you and scares you about um, stepping into your gift and speaking out the fact that soccer was the vehicle and yet it's not the dream?
Yeah, soccer took me as far as it could take me. Right, I was still able to travel the world. I was still able to go play in college and do things that most people dream of. The raw reality is, when I was very focused, I was good. Somewhere along the way, I lost focus and started focusing on other things, and that was evident in how my career ended up. The beauty in my story, or what I have truly embraced over the past few years, is the healing process. And as I began to heal through trauma, through past versions of myself, that's when the gifts started coming up, right? So, yes, I have the history of my grandmother speaking positive affirmations over me and saying, I know God's going to use your voice. And he's put me in positions to speak, right? To be on stages. He's put me in positions to be in movies, right? And to use gifts that I didn't even know that I had. The last thing was the music that he gave me. It was like all this other stuff. And then here comes your ability to sing again. And I mean, honestly, if you would have met me a few years ago, the joy and the passion, the energy that I vibrate with now is completely different than it was a few years ago.
It's really cool for you and I, and we've talked a lot about where we've been and what we've gone through and our identities. And what's really sweet is the alignment, where we've been like, oh, I was experiencing this in this season. I was experiencing this. And to have that connection of like, oh, and we overcame it, right? And we're not that person. So there is this beautiful like pain turned to purpose. And there's still so much more to come, right? And yet one of the things that you and I think align on is the identities that we have taken over time, right? So how did that transformation kind of start, potentially even get you to the place you are now? Because I think there's a lot of people who don't realize that they are the thing that they thought they were. And yet there's a calling and there's a yearning and there's something knocking inside them and saying like, this isn't it, right? And you know that, you have that experience. So what was that like, that transition?
The interesting thing for me is I've always known I would be great. I just didn't know what. I didn't know what I'd be doing. And I convinced myself it would be through, again, the vehicle that I mentioned earlier, right? I lost that somewhere along the way because I began to become somebody I never intended on being. And that was mainly because of the habits I had at the time. And for somebody that's listening, I know you know the gift that's inside of you. I also know that you dream about it. And it's easy. It comes easy to you. And because it comes easy to you, it's easy to neglect. This is natural, right? Like, and that was me, right? It was easy to walk away from the stuff that was a gift because I didn't have to work for it. And so life took me into places where I actually had to start working on things that I buried, right? Traumas that I buried from childhood, numbing and different vices I was turning to really avoid going into the dark places, really just, You know, people use the phrase, there's skeletons in our closets, right? And there's monsters under your bed, right? It doesn't matter where you put the trauma, it's there. And I didn't want that to overtake me and to keep me from being who I knew I was called to be. So the shift for me was getting to my breaking point, right? Going through anxiety, going through depression, going through, um, you know, burnout in my corporate career, eventually leading to a panic attack. Most people would have made a decision to go to therapy at that point. I didn't, right? I just kept doing what I was doing, which was exercise, which became 7 days a week, which became an addiction in its own way. Um, whether people would say, well, that's healthier than the other stuff you were doing. Yeah. And I was still avoiding the problem, right? It took my grandfather passing for me to actually wake up, because that was the only thing that got me to the point where I broke. Like, I literally could not recover. I was crying myself to sleep. I was a shell of myself. And so no one wants to stay there, right? Eventually, I was like, I need to get professional help. And if I delay this any longer, I don't know what could happen. And I didn't want to find out. And so I got help. And I'm grateful for my therapist. I'm grateful for the connections I've made since that time. Again, therapy is something that worked for me. I now have the tools that I just give back to others. And I think that's what we're supposed to do in general. What you learn, you give back, and you're able to help people in the places that you've grown through and grown from. We just have to actually go into the dark places and face it. And that's scary.
So it's interesting. There's several things that were kind of coming up for me. And one of the things that came up, and I think is a pretty interesting topic, and you and I also agree on this, is what it takes to kind of walk through that, right? What it takes to overcome vices, addictions, all of that. And coming from the space that we are followers of Christ, there's a lot of narrative, and there's a lot of people that have all the things to say about holistic ways or getting therapy, right? Or even taking meds. Everyone has a thought, right? Everyone has an opinion that they're certified to have. And yet you and I understand and believe in what it takes to have a little bit of all those things. I think people listening here, there's a variety of listeners from a variety of backgrounds. What does that look like to truly believe, like as a follower of Christ, to believe in the power of God, and also to believe in science and the tools and the things? And what does that look like for you? How would you describe that?
It's interesting. I asked you a question offline. How did God raise Jesus from the dead? And if anybody has a response other than I don't know, right? Like, because you don't know. Our brains cannot comprehend the magnitude and the greatness of God, right? And if you believe in Jesus, if you believe in his resurrection, go for a walk. We had the opportunity to go the beach the other day and experience a workout, and just looking at the ocean and being in nature, right? And you see the wonder and the vastness and the beauty, right? I love the ocean. I love the beach. I don't know how that was created, right? And so it goes back to where we're at today. I don't know how we are supposed to get to the place that God has for us if I'm not in alignment with him. That's literally like the first step for me. It was, I'm not in alignment. I'm broken. I don't want to be broken. What do I want? I want joy. I want love. I want peace. it dawned on me later that those were fruits of the spirit. I was like, oh, and I,
Like, oh, church. Interesting.
you know, I'm like, and I sat at church my whole life, and don't remember that message.
Must have fallen asleep that
Look,
day.
I fell asleep at a few messages, a few sermons. Yeah. So it's interesting because when I started focusing on those three, self-control grew out of that. Again, another fruit of the spirit. So once self-control came, that's when I was like, okay, now I need to actually go and see what are the fruits of the spirit. And it was like, oh, I can, that, that's, yeah, I want that actually. So all that said to me was now I'm beginning to align and be in alignment with our creator and with what Jesus represented when he was here on earth. It's a lot easier for me to show up now, right? So I don't have to carry the weight of all the stuff that I was carrying as I began to heal all that bag or that ruck for people that are listening. If you're you're an athlete or, you know, an exercise enthusiast, fitness enthusiast like myself, imagine carrying this backpack and you have these bricks, and these bricks represent your trauma and everything you've grown through or are going through. And so you're just carrying this through life, and it's just starting to weigh you down because the more you experience stuff, you're putting in. So the beauty about healing is as you continue your journey, you start taking a brick out and start laying it down. So the pressures that I had before, the weight I had before, I don't have anymore. It's much easier for me to open up. It's much easier for me to sing now. And that makes sense because I'm not weighed down by the stuff of the world anymore, right? If I can, for a second, my grandmother, when I was out there, and I'm going to use the term wilding out, my grandmother said, Chris, every time you sleep with somebody, you're leaving a piece of yourself behind. I didn't catch that when she told me in the moment because I didn't have the maturity and the wisdom yet. But it dawned on me later because the beauty about parents is when they speak, we may not catch it in the moment, but you catch it when you're ready. And it comes
And then
back.
you never forget it.
You never forget it. It's like repeat. I can hear her. I can hear Paul's words in my head loudly throughout my childhood and my adult life. But when she said that and it actually hit, I was like, wow, I've been trying to fill all these holes and these gaps with these vices. I was never going to get there. This is crazy. Well, you know what? I think I can heal it just by getting in alignment. And slowly I started seeing those holes fill, right? Similar to the Japanese bowl. I forget the name of it. But that gold was filling in the ground.
Yeah, it's really cool too because I think one thing that I love about your story is all the things that you did that you did do, right, have led you to here. And one thing about the Brittany Wheeler show that I love and the people that I interview is just to come and be their most authentic self, right? And there's such a stigma that I think the show is going to break, and that is the Western Christians, and that is just really broken, right? Broken people. And I know that standing on that and being able to speak to that and bring on guests like yourself who have walked the walk, who have done the things, done all the things. You and I have done all the things. And it was doing those things that have prepared us and equipped us to go out and help people where we once were, and also to give us a testimony that it doesn't work, right? And it has nothing to do with, four walls of a church. It has nothing to do with how many times we show up. It doesn't have to do with any time how much we, wear the right clothes, any of that, right? It's about the relationship with Christ, right? And it's about what he has given us that we can't even put into words, right? Because nothing else, right? For me, it was drinking. For me, it was sex. Nothing else could fill the things that I was looking for, right? And so I just think it's really profound the more and more conversations that I have on the show. And also for your story coming from the church, right? I just feel like there's so many people that are listening to the show that maybe grew up the way you did, right? Attending every Sunday, because that's what someone told them to. And yet there's a void in the understanding. That's good. There's a void in the understanding. Or they're like, okay, well, this is tantalizing. I'm in pain. I don't know what to do, but like, I'm not sure. How do I step into this faith thing? So just give a gist of like, what was your relationship with God like before? And, and how did that change over time to where you are?
Yeah, so you're right. Yeah, my granddad was a deacon. My grandmother was a head usher in our church, and I was at church on Wednesday, Sunday, multiple times throughout the week because we were Baptists, right? So there was always something going on. Um, let's be real. When you're a kid, you want to go to church. How often? It's rare. Yeah, and I was at church a lot. So uh, eventually, as I got to the age of middle school, high school, my parents allowed me to start going to church with my friends. And it was cool because, all right, well, now I get to see my friends and I can go to church. So I am learning about God and I'm doing it with my community. It's different when I was just doing it with my family because I'm like, but this was a reason for me to go. Now I can hang out with my friends. And the interesting thing is, it's not that I didn't have a relationship with God when I was a kid, because I always knew who God was. The intention of building and developing that relationship, I didn't know how important that was, right? And so when I was a kid living with my parents up until the age of 18 before I went to college, everything I was doing was to please them, right? I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to give them a bad name, right? They were well known. My grandmother ran a very successful business in our hometown. My granddad was a lieutenant colonel and in a military town, right? Like, I wasn't going to get away with anything. And so I was just like, okay, well, let's just not. Then I go 21 hours away from home to Carolina, and North Carolina, throw them hands up, take your shirt off, like I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy.
T-Pain was popping in 2004.
Look, it's really interesting, the guy I created when I went to school, because no one knew me. They didn't know me as the choir boy or the good kid that you called at 2 or 3 a.m. And I would go in my parents' room like, hey, so-and-so's drunk. And they're like, Chris, why are you even asking us? Just go get them. Do whatever you need to do, right? Like, that's the level of trust I had with my family. I was telling you, I don't remember them saying no to me when it came to like going someplace, because I never got in trouble. My grades were good. I was focused on soccer. Like, I was just never doing
Yeah,
this.
you didn't violate that trust for them. There's no reason for them to suspect it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I went to school, I was like, okay, well, they're not here. Now I get a chance to like, who do I want to be? And, you start partying, you start having sex. I had my son when I was going into my junior year. So I found out that he was going to be born my sophomore year. That was the first time I battled depression. And I didn't know how to deal with it because I'm like, wait a second, I'm the golden child. Like, this doesn't, to be honest, I didn't know bad things could happen to me. Like, that's how naive I was. I kid you not. I know that sounds so bad, but I really didn't. I was like, wait a second. There
are consequences to your actions.
I was like, wait a minute. So
you're thinking you're gonna have sex, but yeah.
I just was like, wait, we're having fun. Things are good. Oh, by the way, now you have responsibility because you didn't listen to it. Because my goal going into school was to walk away, still a virgin. My goal was to get married, a virgin, right? Like, that was my goal. Maybe that goal was naive, but I don't know. There's still, the beauty in that is I went back to the celibacy after everything that I was doing, right? I don't know how much time we have to really dive into the story, but getting back to my relationship, it was once I started developing the relationship, but I didn't call out to God until I literally had nowhere else to call, right? And my hope is that people get there before they get to the broken places.
Right? I actually particularly pray that, right? Because I know, Like, I think sometimes we have to be very intentional about our prayers. And it's really easy for us to pray and we think what we're praying and maybe what our heart's intent. And yes, God knows our heart. But I do pray when I know that someone is going down a path that like they need God within them, that they need the Holy Spirit. I do pray like, Lord, please do not allow it to get to the worst before you turn it around. Because I had to experience that, right? You've had to experience that. If I could have someone not experience that and find Christ and wholeness and healing and all the fruits of the Spirit, then that's a win, right? And I also recognize that like that had to happen. And we're both really stubborn. So that's also probably a part of it.
Yeah. So eventually, I remember being on my knees and just asking God why, right? Like telling him I don't understand. And this was when I had started the business by this time, right? Like this was 2022. I left corporate because of the burnout thing and the panic attack. I was like, all right, this isn't, maybe this isn't for me. So let me just figure out the rest of my life. And so I started the organization and didn't know what I was doing, right? I had no idea. I was just like, I don't know, I'm just going to host a fitness event and talk about mental health. Maybe we can learn how to make money. But I remember in 2022 complaining, like, God, why? Like, why did you give me this? I don't understand. All of the things, right? Just complaining. And a few years before that, I remember hearing audibly, because I like to complain to him quite a bit. And not audibly. Forgive me. I heard it, but it wasn't audible. It was just like this saying that came over me. If not you, then who? And then I continued down the journey a few years later, right? And a few years later, I get to the point where I'm on my hands and knees crying. And I'm like, I don't understand like what I'm supposed to do. Like nobody sees the vision that you've given me. It doesn't make sense to them. And it definitely doesn't make sense to me. And I looked down at this tattoo that was supposed to be something else, right? And I remember going into the tattoo studio. I had sent them a design and I'm sitting in a chair. She dips the ink. She's ready to start. And I literally stop her before she puts the pen on my skin. And I said, hey, wait a second. And this verse popped up. And I don't remember reading this verse. Like, I'm sure I had because I've been in church, but I literally do. Up to that point, couldn't have told you at all what it meant. So I looked it up real quick, Proverbs 3:5. I read it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. And I'm like, hey, this is what I need on my arm. And she looks at me like confused. Like, first off, that's just all writing. It's a lot, right? For a tattoo artist to just, and I was like, I don't know why. Just put this on. And I remember when I'm on my hands and knees and I'm complaining, I look down and I see this and I just started laughing. And in that moment, it was like, bro, I don't need you to understand. I just need you to trust me and just keep moving forward. It's because God knows us. He knows our heart. Like my intentions throughout my whole journey have always been pure, and they've led me down the wrong path because I trusted my heart. And so by getting in alignment, trusting God's heart to take over, right? Now I'm starting to see me move different. It's easy for me to be in spaces that I couldn't have gone into before because I would have fell victim to them. I would have, I wouldn't have had the strength, if that makes sense. And so that's why, like, when I do this work, I don't always go into spaces and say, God changed my life and he did this, right? That's not my business. That's not my organization, right? And I know that he's given me this business to be my ministry so that when I am out there hosting events and doing whatever, that I'm representing him. And so there are times and moments where I'm able to share my story. And there's times and moments where I can pull somebody aside and actually have a one-on-one with them. That's the beauty of this ministry, is you don't see God at the forefront. You don't see church,
Jesus fish on there.
right? No Jesus fishes,
Crucifix.
no Bible verses, right? The name is mentally shredded.
Yeah.
You know, what does that mean?
And they don't even know that they're about to get bamboozled by Jesus. Right? Like, that's your heart. And it's not like it happens. It just happens because it's meant to happen, right? It's not about you having a plan or this person, I'm going to do this, I'm going to save this person. Like, it's not like that, right? And I think what was coming up also for me when you were talking is, because I actually wrote this question down and you kind of spoke about it. And I think a lot of people, the only way to know that God has brought you out of something is to know how radically different you are when you go back into that same thing. And how you act, how you respond, how you carry yourself. You know, God has healed you in all the ways. He's healed me on all the ways. So those exact places, if we need to, we can go back to serve him. Not because we're feeling crazy and we want to do what we did back in the day, right? And I always thought it was super interesting. I love that God spoke to you. And for the listeners that have listened to many episodes, they know that God literally, quiet time, prayer time, said to me, is a life you long for worth drinking for? And everything I had ever done up to that point, right, was truly of my flesh. Like, I really was trying, right? It wasn't because I couldn't keep a job, right? It wasn't because I couldn't go without drinking. But my tempo, what was going on the inside when I started drinking, became controlled by what was unhealed on the inside. And so from that moment, it was like, I can't even describe it. It was like a Tupperware lid, like the cookie lids. It just clicked into place. And I felt something like just automatically shift inside me. And I knew it was going to be different. And people, I think, I will say to people, because if me claiming being a social alcoholic helps people to see that the way they're living is no different than the way that I'm living, and that there could be better for them, then I'll claim that. Otherwise, I'm not. And the reason is Jesus healed me. I don't have cravings. I don't have any of that. That Tupperware lid container was the release of everything that was holding me hostage, because of that, and because Jesus saved me and God healed me, that like I can go back in bars. I pour people wine, right? Like, I can be back in those spaces so that I can be a light and love to people. And it's really cool because that's not everybody's story. And I do think that when you bring God on the inside, he's going to do way more, right? And so for you to even speak about, like, you could tell when you were healed. You could tell because you were carrying yourself differently. You were walking in those spaces differently. You stepped into celibacy, right? And the reality is, like I did that a lot, a while ago as well. Something that I wouldn't have necessarily done on my own. I didn't know I needed that, right? You never really know you need it. And God's like, no, walk with me, right? And so I think I'm going to answer my own question. I think you will know when God has worked, right? When you do go into those exact same places differently. And I will also say, for those people that don't know God as well, or maybe are navigating, I also don't believe God's going to bring you through something that you've already done, unless you were meant to walk through it differently, to heal, to create wholeness. He's not going to torture you, bring you back in. So if you've been a drinker, right, and you find yourself back in those same places, the question is it you or is it God? And how are you handling that, right? I think so many people then believe that because they go back into those places believing that God's bringing them through that, and yet there's no peace or healing involved. They're just back in those same situations again. That's like, no, that's not how that works, right? For me, just in my life in general, again, people on the show know, like, the daddy issues that I have, right? And I don't believe God is going to allow me to go through that, right, with my future spouse, because that's just not the kind of God he is, right? He invites us to healing and wholeness, but he can bring us into something different. It is our flesh, it is our pain, it's our unhealed self that duplicates the generational curse, right? And so I think that for anybody listening that is just trying to navigate it all and understand, just if you're going back in those spaces differently, God's doing something. And it may be small, right? I think we always want this huge change. We want, like, oh my gosh, like you talk about often in fitness, like just sustainable small changes over time, right? That's still progress in God's eyes. If maybe you don't freak out on the road during, like, traffic, that's a win. And honestly, like that changed for me dramatically. I wasn't cursing as much anymore and yelling at people. Instead, I'm like, clearly you needed that. Let it go. Right. And then it manifests into big things. Right. Because we're walking that walk. Right. And I think I think God is so good like that. He never gives us more because he knows that we need to work up to more. Right. We need to work up to healing and wholeness. I want you to dive into what you're doing. And there was a question that was on my mind, and then I did actually forget. But one of the things before you go into mental show, I just think there's a lot more people out there that are where you and I were, drinking, sleeping around. Not because, and I want to make this clear, not because we were doing it to hurt ourselves or hurt others, but because we were longing for wholeness. We were longing for love. We were longing for like our true intention on the inside, right? But I don't think I think there's more or less out there. And that does not just be their story, right? But there's something on the inside that is calling them. How do you guide someone, or how do you tell them? How do you talk to them through being obedient to what you and I know is God's call for something better when everything else seems so overwhelming to you? It's fine.
Give an example, right? It is not my responsibility to tell you you're doing something wrong. It's not my responsibility to condemn you and make you feel worse. I just decided to be the example. And so because of that, people have come to me and asked me questions because they've seen the shift, especially if they've known me. If they didn't know me, then they just trust me already to ask me questions.
They've heard this version. Yeah.
Right. Or to hire me. Right. Mainly that's what it is. And so to me, it's, I longed for becoming the type of leader that I knew I was. Right. I was captain of the soccer team. I was always put in the leadership position, student council president. It's not like I didn't know that I was being set up to be a leader. I just wasn't living out that in my day-to-day life, right? And so I had to change. And I'm grateful that God put people in my life along the way, right? I had a mentor that say, Chris, you live in a glass house. If you actually want to be this type of person that you say you want to be, imagine you living in this glass house and people just have free range and free access to just be able to watch you. Because you do the same stuff that you would do. And my ego was like, yes, I would. And then I went home and I was like, blackout curtains, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's just people, right? I think ultimately we want to be good. Ultimately, we want to feel good. Both of those could be true, but doing good and feeling good may be two different paths. And you end up at the same place. I had to learn that. And so if you're listening and you're trying to figure out like, okay, well, I'm still in the habits. I'm still seeking the vices. Cool. That's okay. I see you. I recognize that you were there because I was there. My question to you would be, the next time you go reach for the vice, do me a favor. Write down what it is that you're feeling before you actually do whatever you're about to do. Just sit with it for a moment, write how you're feeling, and then do whatever you want. That's all. That's all I'm gonna ask. That day one with me. This is a free coaching session. And then get back to Brittany.
It's so interesting too, because I'm going to add on to that, and then we'll get into mentally shredded. I think that what kept me and keeps most people is, number one, not understanding the why that they're doing those things. And then there's shame that comes with it. And so chasing after the thing, because you've always done it this way, there's comfort in that. And yet the torment and the cycle of the shame, it just comes back. And so I think that like as you're asking yourself those questions, ask yourself, like, why are you holding shame? Right? I think that shame keeps people stuck more than just about anything else. And yet there's nothing to be shameful of because we're human and we're broken. And if someone is projecting that on you, then their community is not your dang business. And I think too often what I'm seeing is those that take up Christianity as a title and religion as authority do a really good job of making people feel that way. And I love that you and I are crusaders for Christ out there actually modeling it, right? Actually walking the walk and letting people find out for themselves our story, our heart, right? You can't be around either of us and not ask, what are they doing? This is interesting, right? People do it all the time. Something's different about her. She's like glowing. And don't get me wrong, I use anti-aging skincare. I'm not a fool. And there is a light within me that is not from me, right? That's from God. And so I think take down the shame and do what Chris said. I think that's incredible. I want to get into mentally shredded. And I want for you to talk about it in a way, not of how you got there, because we've kind of briefly chatted about that. People can obviously put the pieces together. I want you to share it from a legacy standpoint. And when you look at the next 15, 20 years, when you look at, when God calls you home, what is it that mentally shredded is going to leave? And what is your goal impact? And obviously sharing a little bit of, obviously, about it to the community.
Yeah, man, it's evolved so much since the beginning.
It's not an easy question. I recognize that too.
And the cool thing is now I know that what I'm leaving behind is a trail to heal. I'm a storyteller, right? So with Mentally Shredded, if people are really intentional with paying attention to what's happening from the beginning to now, you're seeing how I've grown throughout the whole process, right? And that's without you even watching the documentary. That's without the short film that's coming out. You're seeing this guy heal in front of your eyes and say, okay, God, what's next? Right. And so if I can be remembered for anything, it was helping people bridge the gap back to our healing. That's it. And so through story, by sharing mine, that's all I've been called to do. Right. Like, I can't judge you for stuff that you're doing because I wouldn't want you judging me. Right. And so that's what I want to be remembered for showing up in love for people, for providing a safe space for people to be their authentic selves. And then 3, opening the door to saying, this is here if you want it, which is healing, which is love, which is joy, which is peace, which is self-control, which is kindness, which is goodness, right? Like, all of that is here, but you have to start where you are. And I know that it's scary.
Yeah. And again, I think the scary part is the voices, right? You experience that. I experienced that, right? And what's scarier than, I think what's scarier than staying where you are is doing something different at first, right? Like I always ask people, like, it's not about why not, right? Or what if? And I'm like, well, what if it does versus what if it doesn't? And so, yeah, I love that there's something so much bigger for what you're doing, and all the things that you do with Mentally Shredded. How lay it out a little bit of what are some of those details? Because I do believe people want to support what they know. People want to support people and individuals that are doing things much bigger than themselves. So number one, how can people be a part, right? Participants in what you're doing in ways, whether it's time, talents, and treasures. And what's the call to action as we wrap that up?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely follow us on Instagram, right? At We Are Mentally Shredded. It's intentional. Everything is intentional by design. That's the community, right? And so if you go there, updates, where's the next pop-up? Where's the next event, right? Are we coming to your country? And that was my vision. I wanted to do something on every continent. And since I was a kid, right? Like, I don't know, I've just been drawn to travel, and even hosting an event in Antarctica, most people are like, bro, that's never going to happen. I'm like, you'll see.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't,
Christopher Weedon never.
look, the limitations are only the ones you set yourself. So, yeah, so please go to our Instagram page. Secondly, experience one of our workouts in person or one of our events in person. We have 3 different programs, right? One is RX, which was the signature program that helped me rebuild and reclaim my power, right? That's where we work out and we combine mental wellness and physical wellness. I absolutely love that program. The next program is the burnout prevention one. Again, something I experienced. So it's all stuff that I was doing and that I've needed in my life that's just been curated in a way that we can now put it in a program and give it back. And that was designed for mental health professionals because I noticed during the pandemic, healthcare workers were burning out. And I kept asking the question, who's helping them? Who's helping them? And no one had a solution. No one even had an answer for me. I was like, all right, cool, right? I'll figure out something. And so I designed a program to target frontline workers. And I said, let me build it around mental health professionals first, and then we'll just grow from there. And that's what we did. And then the last one was Stories of Triumph. It's just allowing people that safe space to come share their story, whether virtually or in person. The beauty of that is we have a show, we have a podcast. And so we get a lot of those stories just through that. What I love is when people reach out and say, hey, we want to host like the RX program, but can we combine the Stories of Triumph? And so that's what I'm doing in Oregon coming up soon. And so if people want to get involved and then stay up to date, you can go to We Are Mentally Shredded on Instagram. You can go to our website, mentallyshredded.org. Yeah, that's the best way to stay up to date.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I could go into a much longer show. I think you could too, but I think that'll be enough for the first one. Is there anything on your heart that you want to leave? It's Stern.
I think we did a good job today, just helping somebody that's right on the cusp of taking that next step. This is your permission to go ahead and follow through with that energy that you're feeling at this present moment, right? And you have people that are here that are willing to walk alongside you. I think that's the beauty in what we're creating. We're creating community virtually, and we're creating community in person. To me, I'm not going to limit myself to a location, right? God doesn't limit himself to a location. So I go wherever he calls me. And that's the beauty of the work that we do.
Yeah. And I will say too, that you're going to get what you get with Chris and I. And so even if it's just, hey, this is how I'm feeling, like reach out, DM Chris, DM myself. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And maybe just reaching out is the step, right? Doing the next right thing is really beautiful. And it's enough. You guys, this has been amazing. There'll be more of Chris. So I know y'all are like, we need it back. Don't worry, there'll be more. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Getting to have a conversation like this in person is definitely something I haven't done in a long time. I missed it. And so hopefully you'll see more of this in the future. As always, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, wherever you listen to podcasts. Share this episode, right? How I bless people, how we bless people is through word of mouth. And it's through you saying, gosh, I heard this story. And the story would help Christopher Weedon, right? Passing this on, listening to more episodes. And so share. Follow Chris wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll put all this in the show notes so that you can be a part of what we're doing. As always, do good things, make me proud, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.